are the answers. Now you can have a look at them. We were talking about aim of the research, and we were talking about problems. Now let's now move on to the next question type, which is choosing heading for paragraphs. What I'm going to do is that, because when I was explaining you paragraph, I told you categorically that the first sentence will identify the topic, so you can very easily give the heading. So let's test that information that I gave you, and let's talk about it. So normally you can have a look at this reading at your own pace. It's here for you. I am not going to read it. I'm going to come down to business directly. Let's see. Basically, we are talking about Australia's first commercial wind farm. What is wind farm? Basically, there are rotor blades. They spin, and because of their circular movement, they produce electricity. So in 2 years, it's 2 years since the rotor blades began spinning in Esperance, Western Australia. So this is an article about, I want you to do a skimming. I can tell you about, I briefly tell you about it, that basically we are talking about a wind farm, how it works, how it functions. Now let's move on and talk about paragraph headings only. So this is a big paragraph. So there are about 10 headings, and they have given you 10 headings, and there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 paragraphs. So there are two additional paragraphs given, two additional headings given. So let's try to do it. Now what I have done is I have put all the headings in one go, and we are going to read one by one the paragraph and supply the correct heading. Now paragraph A was already given as an example, so I have omitted that, and I have come to paragraph B. I will read just one sentence and try to give you the answer. Now let's read it. Because of its isolation. What is isolation? Isolation means something that is separate and secluded. For example, the man in a solitary prison cell is isolated from other prisoners. Isolated, not with the rest, okay, at some remote place. So let's see. Because of its isolation, Esperance is not linked to Western Power's grid, which supplies electricity from gas, coal, and oil-fired power stations to the widespread population of Western Australia. Just one sentence. What does this sentence say? That to all the Western Australian cities, the electricity is provided by Western Power grid. But there is one place which doesn't get electricity from Western Power grid. Which is that place? That place is Esperance. And why doesn't it get? Because it is isolated, remote, away, not linked, not close. So let's read the options and find out which can be the heading for this paragraph. Benefiting from an earlier model, important operative conditions, examining the public confusion, where to go from here, how it's all linked up, finding a suitable location, comparing wind speeds in Australian cities, matching operational requirements with consideration of appearance. What makes Esperance different? So what should be our answer? Which one? Yes. Are you there? Okay, so the topic is Esperance. And because Esperance is isolated, it doesn't get electricity from Western Power grid. So my heading is what makes Esperance different. There are two reasons. One, it is isolated. The other, it doesn't get electricity from Western Power grid. Okay? Now let's move on to the next paragraph. So we have got the first heading right. Now let's move on to the next paragraph. What I'll do is that I'll remove the aspirants, what makes aspirants different, so that you do not consider it again and again whenever looking for the paragraph heading. Let's move on. All right, paragraph C. The 5.8 million 10-mile lagoon project is not Esperance's first wind farm. So what they are saying, that this farm that has been set up by spending almost $5.8 million, it's not the first wind farm. Really? Let's find out. The success of a smaller experimental wind farm at a spot called Salmon Beach encouraged the state power utility to take Esperance wind seriously. So now what they are saying is that this is not the first wind farm. They made it after the success of a smaller experimental farm. So the first heading that comes to our mind is benefiting from an earlier model. So what? There was an earlier model, like it is mentioned in the second sentence, the success of a smaller experimental wind farm at a spot called Salmon Beach encouraged the state power utility to take Esperance's wind seriously. And even the first sentence also says that this 5.8 million project is not the first wind farm. So we can very easily say benefiting from an earlier model. Hope you get it. All right, moving on to the next type. The wind farm is connected to the power station by a 33 kilovolt power line, and a radio link between the two allows operators to monitor and control each wind turbine. What are they talking about? They are talking about the connections, how the farm is connected to the power station and how it's all linked up. So let's find out what is the heading for this one. Important operative conditions. No, we are not discussing operative conditions. We are not discussing the public confusion also, and we are not also discussing where to go from here, and we are discussing how it's all linked up. So actually the heading for this particular paragraph is none other than how it's all linked up. Yeah, isn't it easy? What do you say? No easy? That's bad. All right. Okay, I guess it's easy. Let's keep practicing, and believe me, it will become very easy. Moving on to the next one. The power produced by a wind turbine depends on the size and efficiency of the machine, and of course on the energy in the wind. Now let's understand what they are saying. They are saying that the power that is produced depends on various factors. The first factor is the efficiency of the machine, how efficient the machine is, and how powerful the wind is. That's what they are trying to tell us. So let's see. The heading that I have is important operative conditions. So in order for the operation to be very good, the turbines have to be very good and the wind has to be very strong. So of course, my choice, which is the correct choice, is important operative conditions. Now let's move on and move to the next. I think we are doing it pretty fast. Am I going too fast? I hope not. Yeah, no, not at all. Let's do it. Okay, now the most favorable wind sites, easy. The most favorable wind sites, whenever you are establishing a wind farm, you need to find which is a good suitable location. So the most favorable wind sites are on gently sloping hills, away from obstructions like trees and buildings, and where the prevailing winds are not blocked. I got it right. And I think we are talking about the location of a farm, which is the best location, and finding a suitable location should be our heading here. Got it? Thank you. Let's move on. Strict erosion controls have been implemented and access to the wind farm is limited to selected viewing areas. Okay, this says that you cannot go very close to the wind farm. Naturally, because of its shape, its blades, you get afraid that you might get cut or get hurt. But since I'm not very sure about it, I would like to read the supporting sentences also. The wind turbine towers are painted white and devoid of corporate logos and signage. According to Mr. Rosser, there is something of a worldwide backlash against wind farms with regards to their visual impact. But because wind turbines perform best in the most exposed positions, they will always be visible. So this suggests, let's see, is there any public confusion in it? No. Where to go from here? No. Are we comparing wind speeds? No, not at all. So what we are talking about is we are trying to match the operational requirement. The operational requirement is that the wind farm has to be exposed. But because it is exposed, the appearance looks a bit dangerous. So matching operational requirement with the... Sometimes you may have to read the whole paragraph in order to ascertain what the topic would be. Okay, so let's move on. Now, this is the last paragraph. And remember I told you that in a passage, the last paragraph will always tell you about the summary, about the writer's opinion, and about the future implications. Now, in the headings, you can see there are 3 headings. Which one talks about the future implications? Examining the public confusion, comparing wind speeds in Australian cities, or where to go from here. So where to go from here means now what to do, future implications. And here also we have the aim now is to identify other remote locations where wind turbines will be a feasible means of supplementing existing power stations. So to confuse you, there were 2 additional headings which had nothing to do with your passage. So we now have done headings for the paragraphs, and I think if you intelligently do it, you'll find it easy. Okay, so another question type finished.